This episode of the Restoration Today podcast is presented by NextGear Solutions, a leading provider of property restoration workflow software. NextGear was recently acquired by CoreLogic, a leader in property information and data-enabled solutions, in a move to bridge the insurance and restoration industries into one open platform and to offer new, best-in-class solutions that improve how the industry helps millions of people protect and restore the homes they love. Learn more at corelogic.com/nextgear. Hey there, thanks for checking out this episode of the Restoration Today podcast. Today, I'm very excited to be joined by somebody whose name has come up in a lot of my conversations lately. It is Tom Gissler, who is the president of Restoration One. He joined the organization in January, but he's been in the industry for a while. He's been with PuroClean and Rytech, and he was a business development director for another restoration company and a police officer in between there, I believe. So that's a little bit of an interesting segue in our career here. So Tom, thank you so much for joining me. I'm just going to toss it over to you and have you kind of introduce yourself, share your background in the industry, and maybe a little bit about the police officer stint there, because I'm a little curious about that one.
All right. First of all, thank you for having me on. It's an honor to even be on any podcast, but a podcast with someone of your caliber is amazing. And so thank you. And yeah, I think Restoration One, I have to believe, is what's driving the interest lately, just because we occupy such an interesting place in the spectrum of franchise restoration or restoration in general. So I'm sure we'll get around to that. But my journey from, if we could just kind of condense it to a Reader's Digest version, started with ServPro. Really will always have a special place in my heart for that brand, only because it was how I even learned restoration was a thing accidentally. It was kind of looking for a job and had gotten out of grad school in Baylor, and a friend said, my brother is a ServPro and looking for a guy to help him. Turns out he was a ServPro. He owned a master license or a trainership. Okay. So he had basically kind of reign over Texas, Oklahoma, Arkansas, and Louisiana. It was the Stone family, and they're famous in the ServPro universe. And again, it's the first of many just kind of magical things that I happened to fall into the Stone family organization, and Kent and Kathy and their kids, their boys. Everybody was super generous and invested. It was just a wonderful job. I then got challenged to move into the actual franchisee space, partnering with Randy Meacham in the Houston area, and he's a large franchisee there. And we worked together and had the privilege of winning Franchise of the Year on the last year that I was with Randy. Left Randy, went to work for Belfour. And in their Houston shop, again, it's all of it. It's just a crazy thing. Like I didn't, you couldn't have sketched it out. It just was, it was luck favoring the bold, perhaps. But went to work for Belfour, ran the Belfour shop as their general manager. They then kind of consolidated power to one area in Houston, which sort of left me out in the cold a little bit. And so I then partnered in an independent garment, soft goods and content restoration company, and did that for a while. Any of the partnerships or independent areas that I ran, I was always in a partner. I never was alone in that situation, because really my skill set at the end of the day is narrow. Probably not the greatest businessman in the world, unfortunately, although my skills have increased over time. I'm really a sales guy and kind of a big picture, kind of seeing opportunities. Maybe a little bit of a futurist is what I'd love to be. But anyway, did that for a while, then went to work for PuroClean. And Steve Ledger was at PuroClean at the time. He had been CIO at ServPro, so he brought me over to PuroClean. had the chance to run the middle of the country for them and then go to the Eastern Seaboard and then be their CAT operations guy. Left PureClean, spun up a couple of independent companies, one in Texas, one in Baltimore, Maryland, with my wife. And luckily, she's got an actual degree in entrepreneurship and finance. So she's the skilled one. In fact, she's still an entrepreneur. She owns her own accounting company, her accounting bookkeeping firm now. But from there, I went to work for a company, Rytech, out of Georgia. My wife basically said, look, as fun as it is working with you, we're done. We got it. I got to get away from you. I am a lot to deal with, admittedly. And she was like, I want to go pursue my own thing. She went on to a law firm, and a series of law firms in Atlanta, and as their controller, CFO. And I went to work for Rytech, and Rytech is not my only, but is probably so far in my career one of my biggest learning opportunities / failures. And they were super nice people, good company, just in a model that did not fit with my skill set at all. I think they wanted it to fit with my skill set. They wanted to move that direction, and they were expecting me to be able to accomplish that. And at the end of the day, I didn't. So after that, I just really had this sort of like identity crisis / midlife crisis, where I looked at my career at that time as a series of just changing the color of my polo at PLRB, until I was in some sort of lavender, I was already in a situation where my tour in the industry, I would walk through like PLRB or BOMA or whatever and be able to stop at almost every other booth and go, hey, how you doing, George, Bob? Yep. I knew everybody. And I'd made a little bit of money and had a kind of an opportunity to kind of take some time off, thought about like what might retirement be, was way too young for that, had way too much energy. And so my wife said, just go do anything you want. And I knew I wanted to be something missional. I knew I wanted to make a difference. I love the idea of doing something brand new, but it's tough to break into a brand new industry, especially when you don't have any skill sets. I'm not going to open a restaurant. I'm not, like I said, my business skills weren't good enough that I could go into some kind of large scale consulting. So a guy at my gym was a police officer. And at that time, we had really begun to really see the narrative of policing being someplace that needed help. Yeah. And I said, man, this seems really grandiose now, but this was my thinking at the time. I said, you know what, maybe if I entered into policing, I would be able to make a difference somehow in just policing in general, nationwide, right? Yep. So I called the Atlanta Police Department, and I really thought they would say, okay, 45-year-old guy. Yeah, nice, but no thanks. But instead they're like, can you fog a mirror? And, are you actively on drugs? And if the answer to the first is yes, and the second is no, then we're willing to give you a shot. It was just, they really wanted people and needed people really, really badly. And so I went in, and it exists in two ways. I'm taking a really long time to answer this, Michelle.
No, that's okay, because I'm really interested in the police officer curve here.
So on the one hand, it's one of the best things that's ever happened in my life. It rounded out an approach to leadership that it means everything to my current position in Restoration One. It's absolutely vital to who I am as a human being. It changed me as a person. I saw an America, an Atlanta, to be fair, that I never saw before. I didn't realize that I existed in a bubble, that I would go from my house to my favorite restaurant to the store and back home and not see that just really on the other side of this veil of perception was an entire world of poverty and want and crime and suffering that exists literally right beside us every day that we just learn to not see, and began to understand the root causes of things like homelessness and poverty and crime, honestly. And more than anything, realizing that if I were in the situation that many of these young men were in, if I had grown up in that way, that the chances that I would make similar decisions are very, very likely. That a criminal isn't a thing. It's a set of circumstances that results in a situation. And I'm not at all giving anybody an excuse or saying that that punishment shouldn't be what it is or whatever, but it really gave me perspective. And on the other side of it, it gave me a set of skills to remain calm and in control, even when chaos reigned around you, when everyone's upset, everybody's scared or incredibly sad, or there's been some sort of tragedy or just emotions running high. The ability to breathe and lead in that situation and take a situation from chaos to order single-handedly sometimes when you were outnumbered and outgunned has direct applications to restoration. So again, I wish I could say that it was planned and that it was all sketched out, but it's just absolutely blessing and good fortune that I made that decision and had that opportunity to spend a few years doing something that was dangerous and incredibly underpaid and hard, super hard and unrewarding. But I wouldn't give that time up. If I could do it all over again, if I had the chance to do it all over again, I would absolutely do it all over again. It's been everything to me. But at the end of the day, I didn't change policing. I didn't change Atlanta. I didn't change crime. I didn't change anything. But it did give me a lot of gifts. So I got out of that. The riots happened. It was a tough time. Suddenly, police officers, including in the city of Atlanta, were being charged with murder for basically doing their job. And policing went from a hard job to an impossible job. And I wish there was some noble thing that I could say. It simply became an opportunity cost. I realized that I could leave policing and go do something that was both safer, more rewarding, and ultimately would make a bigger impact in lives than I was doing. So the experiment basically had run its course. And by that, I mean, my wife said, "You're done. You're finished. We're not going to do this anymore." And so she convinced me to leave. We had just had our son, which, by the way, Michelle, if you want another reason to chalk up on the ledger of ways in which I'm a cautionary tale, I'm 50 years old and I have a 2-year-old son. And so that's insanity. So that's just another little spice to the gumbo that is my life. But yeah, so I left policing and I was looking around for something to do. Obviously, restoration is what I'd done all those years before then. And I heard about Restoration One and talked to Sherry Rose and Gary, the CEO, and MPK, I mean, all of them. And I said, listen, I know what you're looking for. I think I'm your guy. Thank God they made a big bet on a guy who was years away from his last restoration experience. And let me say this, my last restoration experience was a failure. Somehow they decided to take a bet on me. And man, I think we're all super happy that they did. And I certainly am, because I'm having the time of my life. Yeah. So that's it. That's probably a really long-winded way of putting it out there, but that's the story.
There are some great success stories in this industry from companies who have taken a chance and hired somebody and it's turned out really, really well. Like sometimes if you get really pigeonholed in that job description or like track record or whatever, it doesn't go well. You have to go for culture and fit and your gut. And, like you got to hire for the fit. I totally believe that. So that's awesome. So what attracted you to Restoration One? What sets them apart from like the other companies that you've been in, maybe the culture or whatever? What made Sherry different? What made the feel different?
Okay. All right. So this is actually something I'm still sort of figuring out. So forgive me if I kind of work through this narrative live, because the gift is still being unwrapped. I'm a year in and I'm still discovering things that I'm falling in love with about this organization. But primarily it was this. When I talked to Sherry and when I talked to Gary, there was a vibe that I had never really experienced before. ServPro was a great organization, but they were very focused on the mechanics of being a very good restoration brand. They were very industry, insurance focused. Their systems were good. Their products were good, but there was an ingredient that was missing. And I didn't know this until I got here, but all of those moves, those jumps that I was missing, it was searching for this ingredient, and I couldn't name it. But I knew that I wanted to be a part of something meaningful, that the core of restoration really matched that of policing, meaning we are arriving on someone's worst day. Mm-hmm. And that the power that we have in our hands is not simply to dry a structure to pre-loss condition. It's not simply to restore a structure to some, quality or whatever. That there is a sense in which there's a very human element. There's a mission there that few companies have embraced. The human element. And so when I talked to Restoration One, they described they said, well, first of all, you've got to line up with our mission statement and our values. And first of all, I thought that was pretty cool, that the mission statement and values wasn't something that was effectively wall art, but that it was something that they used as a tool to make decisions. And the mission statement started out with, and their values started out with, we are people. That we see the human factor in restoration as being the most important. And we see the customer as the person standing right in front of us. And I would later learn, much to my surprise, initial horror, that not only were they not on insurance programs, that they didn't want to be on insurance programs. And I was like, my brain just went tilt. Like, why wouldn't you want to do what everybody else is doing? I mean, that's the marketplace, right? I mean, ultimately, every restorer's dream is to end up on State Farm's preferred vendor list and to watch the golden doors open up and money pour in. That was my view of the restoration industry. Honestly, it was. And they taught me. I wish so bad it was me teaching them, because what a legacy, but it wasn't. It was the other way around. They taught me that when you are a program company and not a people company, that it changes the dynamic of the customer, the homeowner, the business owner, the daycare owner, the dental office owner, the whatever. It changes that person into an obstacle you've got to overcome to get to the paycheck. And that just that little shift in this crazy kaleidoscope of an industry changes the entire picture. And that when you decide against all odds that I'm going to service this person who called me, agnostic to what the insurance company will pay for, to what people, the adjuster would rather see, how many fans, how many days drying they would prefer, that if I'm going to do the right thing every time for that person in front of me, that it changes everything about your company. And when I tell you that it's taken me a year to still be unwrapping all of the magic that's in that, I'm telling you, it's crazy. And so I'm doubling down on that. I'm going to ride that horse as far as I can take it. And there are people who come to me, Michelle, on a weekly basis, big guys that I respect, that are in software companies or in other restoration companies. They're saying, Tom, you are an idiot. Cave, bend the knee to the insurance company. That's the only way you're going to have success. a major software company that you would recognize if I named it. I won't name it. Came to me at a show recently and said, listen, I love your heart, dude. And you could tell he was just like trying to do me a solid because I love your heart. But we're going the way of the auto repair industry. The insurance companies will win. You need to align your company now with just being that shop that knows how to do a fender and a side panel at the cheapest possible way. And you need to make sure you've got the technology to do that, because that's where we're going. And I think that a smart businessman probably would listen to that. But what he doesn't know is that I've spent my entire career burning my life down one story at a time. So it doesn't scare me at all to say, I'm going to stick to my morals on this one, man. I found a magical place that really likes people. And I really like people. I am a person. So sure. I'm going to stick to it, man. I'm going to ride this, Michelle, as far as it'll go.
I love it. I know some independent companies that are doing the same, but I've not heard of a bigger organization or a franchise system doing that. So what is your business development process? What does that look like? If you're not going through the programs and stuff like that, how are you getting your business?
Whew. All right. So
not that you have to give away all trade secrets, but
yeah, I got you. Yeah. I'm really not. I mean, look, I wish there were some trade secrets. I mean, that would be amazing if I had something in the vault on this deal, but it's really, really simple. So let me back up a sketch, if you will, and then we'll get there. Okay. So I'll tell you from a ServPro perspective. Here's another thing that happens when you're in one of the traditional sort of big box, brands. When you turn on the program work, that work is low margin, high volume. Okay. So it effectively turns you, even if you're just a guy in a small shop trying to do, $500,000, $1 million a year, it turns you into sort of a Walmart, right? It means I got to sell a lot of these socks, man. I got to, a lot of this product's got to go out the front door. So you staff up for the volume. You arrange your whole business for that volume. And I'm going to tell you a story, and I'll remove all the names to protect the absolutely guilty, but it happened in my life.
Hey, I love
okay. My father-in-law, and we live in the sticks, so we got to get in the car and drive a hot minute to get anywhere that sells anything worth having. So there's not one of my brands that covers where my father-in-law lives. And so he had a water damage in his house. And I said, listen, if you don't mind, I would be interested in just using you as an experiment to see how does this work if you just go along with the program and I'll help you navigate it, but let's just figure out what happens. So he called his insurance company. They said, do you have somebody on site? He said, no, I don't. They said, well, then we'll take care of it. They didn't even tell him who, actually. They just said, your adjuster will take care of it. And the adjuster apparently called in the restoration company. You would recognize them if I named them. Very common color. And they showed up and they botched this job. I'm not talking about just a little bit. I mean, they completely mishandled the job. It was a Category 3 loss. Right. They refused to acknowledge that it was a Category 3, even though it was absolutely textbook Category 3. As a result, they just came in the house and they just put some fans and a DHU, no containments, an open floor plan, no containment, no nothing. They just put them in there, left, didn't move a stick of furniture, didn't remove a single baseboard, didn't check for anything, never used a FLIR camera. They literally just looked to see where the water was. Put the equipment in, 3 days later, showed up, took the equipment out and said, that's it. My father-in-law, meanwhile, was going, hey, the bottom of my office furniture is swollen up. The baseboards are popping off over here. My wife and I are starting to have some respiratory difficulties. And this is where it immediately ended up. The adjuster said the restoration company is the one that is the expert. They know what to do. So he went to the restoration company, talked to their guy over the phone because they'd come and picked up the equipment. He said, listen, I don't think that you've done right here. And because honestly, and this is a little bit of cheating, I had shared with him a copy of the S500 and I just literally noted, this is what the standard says. I mean, when you talk to them, quote the S500, this restoration company said, I'm sorry, that is what it says, but the insurance company won't allow us to do that. So immediately he was triangulated. Whichever way you go, the other one would just point the other direction. And meanwhile, he's stuck with now microbial growth that doesn't look good growing behind some baseboards. He had an HVAC company come in to look at his ducts, and they said, we can't even clean these. We got to replace a lot of these ducts. So he's now in a situation where he's looking at some legal action and completely dissatisfied and completely, I mean, I feel responsible because I was like, hey, let's go along with this. And by the way, this is not a fly-by-night insurance company. You would recognize the insurance company. You would recognize this is not, this is middle of the road restoration, okay?
Yep.
So when you say, what's your business development model? It starts, Michelle, at not doing that. That's the number one thing.
Yeah.
And what we've discovered is that when you come in and you say, look, we're not even going to worry about what the insurance company prefers. Now, we're going to be ethical, and we're going to do a dang good job, and we're going to document what we do, and we're going to operate according to the standard, and I mean the letter of the law, okay? So we're going to do the right thing, but we're going to do the right thing right from the start without asking for permission. When we say we're the experts, we don't say that sarcastically. Mm-hmm. We believe that we have a job, the adjuster has a job, the insurance company has a job, and all three of those jobs are different jobs. Our job is to be safe and to be professional and to restore that structure, and more importantly, restore the life of the person who occupies that structure to the degree that we can, back to pre-loss condition, back to normal, bringing order to chaos. And when we do that, these people become ambassadors for our company, and they will spread. So a big part of our growth has simply been organic. And man, do I know that sounds cheesy. That sounds like, oh, sure, Tom, your business is growing because you give good service, wink, wink. It shocked me as much as it shocks everybody else, because I'm used to saying that as something that you hang up there as like, of course. It turns out when you really do it, it makes a huge difference.
Yes.
So that's number one. But number two is when we tell the story appropriately, and when we go after accounts, mainly in the commercial marketplace, okay, mainly in property management, be it residential or high end or high net worth or commercial space or whatever. And we tell the story and explain that, listen, we know you've got an insurance company. We know you've got a deductible. Maybe you've got a high deductible, and so there's a lot that happens in this area or whatever. Here's what we're going to do. We're going to bring the highest degree of professionalism, the highest degree of safety, depending on what your needs, the highest degree of discretion. We're going to stop and spend probably longer than we should understanding what your specific needs are. And then we're going to do our job in the way that best fits our professionalism and your needs. And we're going to do it for a cost that is not the lowest, okay? It's also not the highest, but it's fair. And you're going to be able to document and defend it if you need to, and so are we, that companies that want to work with us. Now, what does that mean? That means that there are companies that go, no, we're looking for the cheapest, okay? That just means they're not a good customer for us. That's good for you. You could go in any direction and find the cheapest. That's not who we are, right? And there are other companies that are like, well, could you help us cheat a little? Could you help us maybe cover our costs or do whatever? We're not going to do that. You're not a good customer for us. Okay. Again, let me help you find somebody, because there are plenty of people out there that help you do that. Yep. But I am not going to live in a world where I see my customer base is so small that I can't say no in order to get to the best yes. So we say no more than we say yes. But when we do find the yeses, here's what happens. We get the majority of their work. We make a fair profit on that job, which we are entitled to make, just like our customer wants to make. Yep. And here's what's crazy. The insurance company, if we do file with the insurance, pays our bill. And if I was any other company wearing any other color polo at that event, I would be so irritated to know that we make 25 to 35% more than you do only because I didn't bend the knee. Brother, don't bend the knee. There's money in being a jerk.
Well, anyway. Or not a jerk.
Well, right. I mean, just say, look, I'm not going to do it. I'm not going to play ball. Yeah.
Yep. Doing it right. I love it. So, okay. So on all of this, so you must be kind of particular about your franchisees then and who you let into the system and finding people who are the right fit and stuff like that. So what does that look like as you have people approaching Restoration One, maybe trying to find a fit as a new business owner? What is your vetting process?
So that's really interesting. So Gary Finley and Micah Finley are the people. Gary's our CEO. Micah he's the CEO of Fran Experts. They're I guess their family, inside their genetics, is franchise sales. I mean, I don't even know how to explain it. Gary's a genius. I mean, he basically grew the Curves franchise into, from a few stores to a global deal. He did Snap Fitness. I mean, everything he touches turns to gold. So tons of credit goes to Gary and Micah for knowing how to sell franchises. But as far as I can understand it, and I leave it to them largely, so I have very little to do with that. Okay. But as far as I can understand it, they've got an old-fashioned approach to the system where when you want to buy a Restoration One, they spend, again, a much longer time frame than probably a lot of people would be comfortable with, really getting to know people face to face and really helping them to understand. And I was actually on a virtual Meet the Team day just earlier today. In fact, we had to rearrange this so that I could be on that. And we go through much the same process that I went through when I joined, which is we start with our mission and values. And we explain, listen, if you want to go straight to the insurance companies, here's the way that I explain it, Michelle. And I'm stealing this, by the way, too, because it came from Tim Hull at Viola and Associates. He said, listen, restoration is going to go in one of two directions moving forward. You're either going to be a businessman, businesswoman, a business person, or you're going to be an order taker. And either one have a model that'll work, and you can make a living off of doing it, but you're going to have to choose the path. You can't do both. And so we explain right off the rip that we've chosen the business person path, and we're not going to be order takers. And so what that means is that you're going to have to hustle, and you're going to have to hustle harder than your average fill in the blank restoration company that you could choose. So if inside your heart you don't have that hustle, you don't have that grind, then we're not your brand. And we encourage you to go that other direction. Take the path that I took. I mean, that would work for you. That's your best fit. You'll be more successful over there. If, however, you got a little cowboy and you got a little hustle, you got a little grind to you, and you enjoy a little freedom of movement, then baby, get on the horse, because we're going to help you succeed. And that's what we're seeing happen. Our guys, we've got more multi-million-dollar franchises on average than any other brand. We've got less turnover than any other brand. We are going crazy out there because we are learning better every single day how to get direct to consumer and doing an end around this traditional deal that involves being somewhere on the list that the call center gives you. We just don't want to do it. And I really pray that we're able to stay free of that model as long as we can.
Do you create estimates through Xactimate, or do you do something else?
So it's a mix. On average, most of our guys use Xactimate with a caveat. We believe that Xactimate, and they would agree, although I think quietly and off to the side, via a white paper that's well hidden on their website, that Xactimate was made so that we could change our prices to reflect our local environment. And we believe very strongly in that, that Xactimate prices are the starting point, not the finishing line, regardless of what the insurance company would want you to believe or have you do. And again, it sounds like I'm very antagonistic of insurance companies. I'm not. Understand, my business model just sees my customer standing right in front of me. So here's what we've doubled down on, Michelle. We've doubled down on building skill sets and tools and software inside of our company that allow our owners to job cost thoroughly and accurately so that they can change their pricing, be it an Xactimate or whatever else platform that they use, so that it accurately reflects what they've got to charge to make a profit. And that's business. I mean, that's more controversial than it needs to be. I mean, people, like, you say that and they're, ooh, really? You're doing that? You know, yeah. Like, everybody should do that. I mean, Oregon is not the same as California, is not the same as Boston, is not the same as Waco, Texas. And nor will Xactimate prices change as rapidly as factors are changing in the world today. I mean, COVID showed us that things can change overnight that drastically affect our margins. And if we don't change as quickly as they do, we'll lose millions in the process. And you know who will care? Nobody. Nobody will care that we lost millions except for us. Is certainly the big insurance not going to come and go, you know, listen, I noticed you didn't change your price list. That's terrible. Let's give you a little extra money. No. Their instinct, just as it would be mine, by the way, if my last name was State Farm or Farmers or whatever, right? Uh-huh. If I was in their seat, I would constantly be trying to figure out how I could save money while at the same time increasing service. I don't begrudge them that, even though they make bigger profits than any other industry in the world. Good on them. That's what they do. But I am not going to take my business guidance from the guy whose only motivation it is to pay me less money. I'm going to do the right thing. And so one of the things that leads to our success is that we put a lot of time in teaching our franchisees how to calculate the cost of doing business. And we make all of our choices on that as well. Just partnering with Accelerate software when there were other choices in the marketplace. And one of the reasons why we did this is not an advertisement for Accelerate, but one of the reasons is that they were very clear about being contractor focused. And they have tools built in that make job costing easier and more manageable. So we went that direction. It was an obvious choice for us. Other software systems said, hey, we make it a lot easier for you to go direct to insurance and get assignments from them. Well, that's amazing and good for you for doing that, but you didn't know who you were talking to. That doesn't work for my world. I need something else. So all of our decisions reflect around that. Hope that makes sense.
It does. Total sense. So kind of in the M&A landscape that we have going on right now, and there's more consolidation and there's companies getting bigger and bigger and some of the independents going away, all of that. Where does Restoration One fit into this? Like, you know, are you guys trying to grow? Do you have growth goals? Or is it like, hey, what happens organically happens organically. People are going to cut. Like, what are your goals now within this landscape?
Whew. Okay. So that obviously is something that's always in flux, but I'll tell you again, in the same Harry Potter-like landscape that has been my life, we were bought by private equity. Could have been an absolute nightmare because many private equity firms come in, they gut things, they are profit focused, and some of these, by the way, some of these private equity firms have direct ties back to those same insurance companies that we're getting business from. And so that's good if you get purchased by one of those guys and you're going in that route. That's perfect. We were purchased by a wonderful PE firm that's family owned and managed, who understand who we are and support who we are and absolutely leave the governance of that. And I was just in a meeting with most of the board just yesterday. And I was walking into the room and I get a little nervous. The PE world's a little new to me. And remember, I'm not like Mr. Harvard Business School or whatever, right? I mean, this School of Hard Knocks is where I got my degree from in business. So I'm walking into the room and my boss, Sherry Rose, is there. And Sherry Rose actually does have all the skill sets in the world. She's a brilliant businesswoman and has run huge companies, ServiceMaster being just among one of them. And so I paused just outside the door before we're about to walk in, and she could tell maybe I'm feeling a little nerves. And she looks at me, she goes, listen, this is going to be fine. I want you to be completely transparent and honest. Just tell them your vision. We want to know what your vision is for the company for the next 4 to 5 years, which tells you that they're going to stick with us for that amount of time, which is wonderful, or beyond, but at least that amount of time. But then second of all, imagine the magic of your boss about to walk into your PE firm saying, we don't have to politic. We don't have to adjust or hide. We're going to be transparent and lay out the vision. And I did in my way. I said, look, this is where we're going. This is what we're going to double down on. Here's how we're going to make it work. This is what we need to make it work. And their response was to absolutely 100% support that vision and say, we believe in it. We think there's a magic in being the only franchise company in this lane. We're going to run harder. We're going to be first, and we're going to prove this model, or we'll run it off the cliff. And here's the deal, Michelle, honestly, there's no harm, no foul. Let's say I fail. Let's say it just doesn't work out and I just run it right off the edge of the cliff. It's not that hard for them to scoot me out the door, chalk another one up to Gisler, and install somebody who knows just how to get into all the major insurance companies. And you know what? Those insurance companies would let us in with open arms. Why? Because we haven't been screwed yet. So, hey, you just step on up, right? You're the new kid in town. If you're willing to knock a penny off every fan and guarantee we're dry in 1.5 days, which I'm assuming we do, as much sense as that might make, then, hey, you're next, right? Get on, buckle up. So, there's really not a whole lot of risk in it. I think that we're going to be successful in maintaining our focus on people. It's just that simple.
Okay, so I want to talk a little bit about your leadership style in failure managed appropriately. I believe you can learn so much through failures, right? If you harness your failures right, you learn way more from those than you do any victory, any win, any success, right? So can you dig into that a little bit and what you mean and what that has meant for you as a leader?
Yeah. So one of the areas, and this is quite frightening, especially in today's environment, which I'm not going to disagree with, that there are a lot of changes happening that are necessary in just our general world. But there are kind of two components that manage or inform my management style. One is a radical transparency, meaning the biggest sin that you could have with me is to lie or be deceptive in your reasoning or your actions. And that's not a moral thing. I'm not trying to be preachy with it. It's just that deception is or lack of communication or misguided communication is an absolute hindrance to productivity and growth. If we're all worried about managing our appearance, then that eats up a lot of fuel that's not being put in the engine going forward, if that makes any sense at all. So I encourage radical transparency, warts and all, man. Whatever you're struggling with, whatever you don't know, how much better is it for me to know you don't know something than for you to spend time covering up that you don't know and faking it and having mediocre performance as a result? That could stretch on for years before we realized we could have solved it in weeks by some training or mentoring or whatever else. So that's one side, radical transparency. The other is that mistakes are okay as long as they are by commission and not omission. And by that, what I mean is that I would rather you make a mistake trying than make a mistake by being afraid to try. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Yeah. So I will forgive your mistake if you said I gave it a shot and I struck out. Well, listen, what can we learn? What if nothing else, we just learn what didn't work, and that's super valuable. Now we could go put that on the wall. That doesn't work. Let's try again, and maybe we'll try again and try again and try again. But when we get it right, we'll get it right better as a result of having gone through that process. A lot of companies, a lot of organizations I've been involved with, but others that I just know, their employees are afraid to act. They're like, eesh, like, oh, I don't know. Will they like this? Will they understand, I don't know. It better sit this one out. And as a result, you lose the flexibility and the maneuverability that we should have as a young, smallish company that isn't the size of the green guys or the yellow guys or the red guys or whatever, right? So if we're going to maintain that flexibility and that nimbleness, we have to be willing to act first and analyze what we did later. So those are two kind of guiding principles that we use going forward, is that we just really want to have that radical transparency, and we're willing to forgive mistakes as long as they're in commission and not omission.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So people first, customers first, and doing the right thing. So training must be a really big thing within Restoration One, making sure that your franchisees understand the standards, understand best practices, understand the science behind drying or odor removal or whatever that may be. So what does training look like for a franchise?
So, oh man, this is why you're so good, man, because you're asking all the right questions. And the reason why I know they're the right questions is because these are projects that are always on my desk somewhere, right? We're always looking at it, and training is huge. Here's the thing. And I say this, I hope a lot of people listen to this, not so that because they're listening to me, but because I want to get some stuff out in the ether. Restoration companies make the mistake of thinking that they need to put a lot of money and effort into the fundamentals of restoration. Let me say one thing openly. We don't dry a building any differently than anybody else. We don't have some special dehumidifier. We don't have some special air mover. We don't have any patent on any equipment that's out there. If you call us or you call somebody else, chances are it's a similar piece of equipment is going to go in there, and probably a similar number and probably a similar arrangement. Okay. So when it comes to training, here's my philosophy. And again, we'll see if this pans out. This is where we're going. I'm going to outsource the parts of my training that don't have specifically to do with the beating heart of Restoration One. And I'll give you an example of what I mean by that. So up until just this year, and right now, literally, we're doing a training class right now. And in that training class, it'll be the last training class for a while, at least, where we teach drying inside of our academy. And that's how I started with Surf Pro. I went to Surf Pro's Training Academy. It was first rate. I mean that. It was really good. It was a really good academy. Weeks long. It was military style, boy. It was good, right? Super good. It influenced my entire career. PureClean had a fantastic academy. They had a full-scale flood house, and you've probably seen it. I mean, amazing, beautiful classroom, smart board, weeks long, teach you how to dry. But both of those guys, God bless them, would make you believe or even overtly say, you're drying the Surf Pro way, or you're drying the PureClean way. There is no drying the R1 way. I'll say that up front. Okay, there's not. So we have partnered with Chuck DeWald and the DeWald Drying Academy to incorporate his E3 methodology for a couple reasons. One, I think he's right. He's a lot smarter than me. And he's the expert. Why in the world would I spend the energy to try and catch up to, much less pass, Chuck freaking DeWald in how to dry when I can send my people and pay for them to go to DeWald? They're going to come out of that understanding drying much better than we could ever do it. So we're going to use Chuck to teach us how to dry. In addition to, of course, IICRC certification, water, ASD, fire, mold, the whole bit, right? Right. But again, we're not an IICRC school. I'm going to partner with those guys that are out there that are the very best IICRC instructors. I'm going to go out, I'm going to find them, I'm going to do that. So when you come to Waco and go through our school, what you're going to be learning is literally the beating heart of Restoration One. That's where we introduce you to the concept of people first, not program, not policy, people first. What is the right way to treat those people? And What's the right way to get business in the door when that's your focus? And so there's a lot of time spent on the process of setting up a job, of managing that job, of ushering a human being or human beings through the process accurately, and then getting business in the door. That sort of organic sauce is what is in our training, not the actual science of drawing or whatever, because let the secret be out. We're all doing the same thing. So now Chuck's methodology does put more emphasis on the mitigation side than the rebuild. He's radical in his in-place drawing. And as a restorer, do I like a mitigation bill being higher even when it shrinks the overall bill? Yeah, I like that. I'm pro that. So we're going to double down with Chuck and get that done. So I hope that kind of answers the question. That's my philosophy of training.
It does. Chuck is awesome. I just actually recorded a podcast with him yesterday with Jeff Jones, who does forensic training, and they're partnering up and all the things. So perfect. I love it. Okay. Well, I don't want to take a ton of your time. I could ask you all the questions. I'm looking forward to seeing you at a trade show at some point and like having coffee and talking to you. This is awesome. Okay. Anything else you want to add before we wrap it up?
I don't know. Let me ask you this question.
Yeah.
What do you think is the future of if you've heard what I've had to say, and we've just scratched the surface. I mean, I'm so in love with restoration, and I'm absolutely head over heels for Restoration One. When you hear me tell that story, and I'll put you on the spot, and you can choose whether or not this makes the cut. Does that sound like a train that's going to go over the cliff, or does it sound like something the industry needs?
Are you talking about the train that's doing this without doing program work and going the
correct, right? Just being people focused. Yeah.
I think that it's very smart. And I know some very successful independent companies that are going this route. And I have to say, refreshing to hear somebody that's going this route. I also talked to Mike Fulton this week about pricing and their lists and labor issues and rates and inflation and all that, So I think that there has been a push in the industry in the last few years. I think pre-COVID, maybe there was more of a push to be more independent and to move away from the carriers and the programs and establish your own price lists. And Ben Justison was teaching all of that and, giving Xactimate feedback and all of that. And I think maybe during the pandemic, it fell off a little bit. And so now there's been the consolidation and there are the bigger companies that are on programs doing program work. But I think that there are more restorers looking at this business model and saying, hey, if I can do this, this sounds great. So, I agree.
I think there's a lane,
but I think it's exciting to hear. And you're not alone in this. And it's cool to hear of a bigger franchise company doing it. And it'll be fun to talk to you maybe this time next year and see how things are going. Because well,
cross your fingers. We're gonna work really hard.
I'm sure it'll be awesome. Well, Tom, I appreciate your time. Thank you so much, and I hope you have a great rest of your day.
Thank you so much, Michelle. It's been a pleasure.
For more Restoration Today, visit our website, cnrmagazine.com, or find us wherever you get your favorite podcasts.